So yeah, I guess what I've been asked, my main thing I've been asked today to talk about is people powered retrofit, which is our end-to-end householder retrofit service, targeted mainly at the able to pay, willing to pay demographic. That's not to say that Carbon Co-op doesn't fully understand the need to do other types of retrofit, and indeed we have a number of different projects on low income, fuel poverty, and what have you. So just because I'm talking about the able to pay market doesn't mean this is, we want to privilege this demographic above all others. I would also say that there is a good case, I would say, to focus service development in this area, because it's one that's been neglected for many years now. Hence a gas crisis, as many might have observed recently. So what I'm going to be talking about is how we build local markets for retrofit that operate at scale. I'm going to be focusing on the local authority perspective, but not exclusively. Obviously, we're a community energy, a third sector social enterprise organisation. And for me, there's a huge opportunity there for public common partnerships, because I think local authorities bring a lot to the table. Social enterprises bring a lot, and together we can be very effective, especially in the absence of government action. So I'll talk about how we build local markets. I'll talk about our experience in Greater Manchester, how it's relevant to other areas. And I'm particularly interested in that local economic development kind of aspect, and how retrofit can be used as a driver for that kind of agenda. Carbon Co-op, we've been going for 10 years now, incorporated, 15 years since we came up with the idea. It's a householder cooperative, not-for-profit organisation based in Manchester. We operate Greater Manchester, and most of our members are in Greater Manchester, but we do have members outside, and we do, as Matthew says, operate more broadly. The reason people join is to gain access to technical expertise, projects, recommended contractors, but also to become part of a like-minded group of citizens taking collective action on climate change. And since our inception, we've focused on large-scale change rather than kind of small behavioural change and little things you can do. We see ourselves as a bit of a vanguard organisation, demonstrating what's possible and sharing that learning with others. I'm going to be talking about retrofit today, but we do lots of different things, particularly in the energy systems field and data, and also in citizen and led energy and energy planning and that sort of thing. But today is just about focusing on retrofit. And in terms of retrofit, for those that aren't aware, it's about energy efficiency improvements, energy saving improvements for the home, fitted retrospectively, retrofit. It also incorporates domestic scale renewables and smart systems as well. It's about a fabric first approach. So that means investing in the fabric of a property, reducing demand as much as possible first, before moving on to other things like services and renewables. It's whole house, thinking about holistically about the house, not necessarily in one go, but having a plan that can be achieved in stages or in one big bang. It's about low impact materials, thinking about the overall sustainability, not throwing a ton of heavy metals at a property and calling it net zero, but taking that holistic view. And it's about open source. We take an open source approach. We license many of our products in the open source domain as well. So I'm not going to talk much more about what retrofit is or what you should do or how to go about it. There's lots of stuff out there. Do have a look. Also reference there to PAS 2035. Some may be aware, hopefully more and more people are aware of that quality process standard in this area. Our work harmonizes within PAS 2035. We're part of the panel, the technical panel writing it. And I suppose, yeah, we can talk more about that if there's interest. People-powered retrofit, yeah, so that's come out of our work over many years, that we've done projects where we've delivered retrofit, where we've delivered training, supported people to retrofit their homes. But around 3 years ago, BASE launched a competition to develop local markets, local retrofit supply chain markets, and we proposed people-powered retrofit as a service, an end-to-end service for retrofit. And the point we were at that time was that we had a lot of people, members and people we work with, who'd got so far in their retrofit journey, but tend to have stalled, maybe at the assessment stage or trying to find contractors. People-powered retrofit was our effort to overcome those barriers, to unstick people and get them all the way through to retrofit. And it's an end-to-end service that helps people right from advice through to assessment, design, procurement, on-site, and out the other end. I'll talk a little bit about it, a little bit of the stages and the things that make up. Barriers to retrofit market. Previous approaches. Okay, well, I'll typify some failed approaches. And indeed, it's 10 years ago, really, since the last policy innovation on a national scale in this area. The Green Deal relied on big organizations, Carillion, British Gas, and it didn't end well. There are some pictures there which show some of the quality issues that were found, not just on Green Deal, but things like eco. The scheme wasn't trusted by people. It didn't work for people. It was too homogenous, one size fits all. Retrofit isn't happening in the UK on a large scale for a variety of different reasons. And we spent a lot of time talking to people and understanding why they weren't retrofitting their homes. Because one thing we found is there are plenty of people that do want to retrofit their homes, which, you know, to some that goes against the grain of traditional thinking. But we're inundated by demand. People are finding problems, finding the right kind of technical expertise, getting the right advice, finding the right contractors, concerns about quality. Would the quality of the works be commensurate with the price? But also things like fears around risks. You know, people are aware of the risks and what can go wrong. They're worried about making the wrong choice. You know, it's a big investment. Also finding conflicting advice. It's a small-scale industry, retrofit. You tend to find people with very particular views that sometimes contradict. And householders and clients feel conflicted as a result. There's a number of reasons why people are stuck, really. Leave that one, but basically, well, actually, we'll come back to it. Why do you think people commission home retrofit works? If you've got ideas about why people would do that, please post them in the chat. So, you know, and this is people who are commissioning retrofit works. What are the motivations? Why think about spending 5, 10, 20, 25, 50,000 pounds on a retrofit? Do post in the chat your thoughts. We've done our research, and our research work looks mostly at the early adopters, and we've asked them why they're interested in retrofit. Primarily for us, for the people that we work with, it's about carbon emissions. It's about greener, making their homes greener. And this research is borne out by other research that other organizations have done as well. It's also about making the home warmer, more comfortable, a better place to be. Bills, like routinely comes third on the list of priorities. So bills and money certainly is part of the decision making, but it's not the primary decision making. And that again goes against the grain of policy making, Green Deal, which said it's got to be cost neutral. It can't cost a penny for householders. Really, they're investing in their homes. It's about making them greener, making them warmer, more comfortable. And as we say regularly, people will spend 10, 15 more £1,000 on a kitchen, more on a car. They're not going to pay back over time. So why should the investment in their home around retrofit do so? We work with the early adopters, the innovators. We don't see people as a homogenous group of everyone's the same. We've got to target everyone the same. I know for some policymakers, that's uncomfortable because a local authority, you want to create services that are universal, absolutely. But we need to acknowledge that certainly within retrofit, a new thing, not common, that will, with any kind of new technologies, we'll encounter the innovators and the early adopters first before the majority start to get involved. That's a pro and a con. It means that the early innovators are particular and different from the majority, but it means they're more willing to go and to take a risk and to take the dive off the deep end and to get involved in this sort of thing. Certainly at this stage of retrofit, we need to focus on those early adopters because they're the people that are willing to go first. And from a community energy point of view, a social enterprise point of view, the pioneers, the early adopters, they're our members, they're the people that we work with. So we have access to that kind of demographic. Some of these people are already have already installed heat pumps. Again, it's a very small number of the population, but we're able to focus on them and interact with them, and it's a window into the future in many ways. So, and social enterprises are an intermediary that can bridge that gap to the early adopters. I'm going to talk through some of the kind of things that we've done, things that I would really recommend anyone looking to replicate this kind of thing in their area thinks about. The first thing we've done is look at personas and mapping and taken a data-driven approach to retrofit. You won't be able to read these slides. They're just illustrative of a GIS, a geographical information systems approach to mapping. There is so much data out there at the moment in terms of homes, demographics, people, attitudes, and it's a very effective way to find people, find the early adopters, find the people that want more willing to retrofit. Look at things like the types of homes and the kind of places we can focus services, because it is, as I say, not one size fits all. Not everyone is the same, and not every community is the same. So a data-driven approach is really important. It's also data collection is about asking people, finding what their priorities are, talking to people. We do a lot of research in that area, focus groups, one-to-one surveys, and what have you. One thing we found here, which informs our service, is there are a significant number of people out there that have a decent amount of budget to throw at retrofit, in the £20,000 to £50,000 kind of bracket there. Again, I talked to some local authorities. They want to focus on small measures, cheap measures, low cost. In terms of developing a service, you don't have the headroom there to create value. But if you focus on this demographic, there is the value there. There are people willing to invest these sums of money. And they don't necessarily need access to finance to do it. Certainly the early adopters, finance isn't a barrier at the moment. It may become a barrier further down the line, that majority, but it isn't at the moment for the early adopters in general. And personas as well. Again, I'm not going to go into detail, but not everyone is the same. We talked about those motivations. There are different people, different motivations, different demographics, different priorities, and it's important to understand those before you launch into something. So yeah, data and mapping and persona, really important groundwork to do before jumping into something like this. Another thing I hear quite a lot of is people don't want to do this, there isn't the demand, no one wants to do it. What I would say is, like, routinely we are overwhelmed by demand, and our biggest challenge is to damp down demand. And one of the ways we do that and reach people is through community-based social marketing. And that's around creating trust and effectively engaging and recruiting clients. I can typify what it's not. It's not adverts on the back of buses, big business. It's not stock images of model people. It's not this. This does not engender trust, and it failed with things like Green Deal. What community-based social marketing is, it's about creating new norms and behaviors. It's a bottom-up approach to communication and to marketing. It's using peers and trusted institutions. The most trusted person to deliver a message is someone's friend, neighbor, or work colleague. It's not us. As much as we'd like to think that it is. Local authorities are trusted on social enterprises, but peers are much more effective in delivering that message. Fundamentally, it's about values, and our values, which are community-oriented, neighborhood-based, and ultimately sustainability-focused. I'll give you just a little bit of a window into a community-based marketing campaign in Levenshulme, South Manchester, community events in the local church, home retrofit energy parties using cameras, collective, bringing people together, accessible, coherent marketing, joined up within a local area, working closely with local authorities, libraries, trusted institutions. Very effective way to generate demand that we have done in this area, and a very effective way in terms of cost and effort as compared to some of these top-down approaches. Supply chain is the other key thing, and our focus is on developing a knowledgeable network of contractors and consultants. If you don't have the contractors, you're not going to be able to satisfy demand. What I would say is sometimes local authority procurement focuses on just bringing in one partner, but there are many and different kind of roles involved in delivery. Here's just a sample of them. Again, not going to go through them all, but these are local trades, small contractors, sole traders in your communities. Again, local economic development, fantastic opportunity here if we can bring them in. Too often the large-scale procurement exercises, they ignore these people and they leave a bit of a desert when they go. For us, it's about engaging, respecting the existing supply chain and working with the RMI sector, refurbishment, maintenance and improvement, that's already working in an area, already in people's homes, and skilling them up, as well as bringing new people into the sector. The training needs to be practical, on site, not in a classroom. It's time away from site. The type of people that will go to these training, they're not the people that are actually doing the work. And again, like the householders, it's about peer support and learning. That's a very powerful way of spreading these skills rather than, top down. Very quickly, I know we're pushed for time, so service design is a key element, again, along with the demand and with the supply. Designing services that work for people and achieve quality retrofit works. Again, we did a lot of work with the supply chain entities, householders, consultants. Louise pictured here designing a service design blueprint here of how this will work for people. There's a limit to what you can do in your office and say, well, it's going to work like clockwork like this, because when it hits people, it's not. It's more complicated. And service design approach is iterative, it develops over time, and it allows space for testing and piloting and change. This is our service design in very broad terms, so I'm not going to go into it in detail, but it's advice, assessment, design, procurement, on-site support and handover. We're not doing the work, we're not contractors, but we assist with procurement into our trained networks. And we're creating this network, this framework for retrofit within an area. Again, that's our expertise rather than actually doing the contracting work, but we do on-site QA in line with the PAS 2035 framework, because it's so important for householders. Little bit of a flavor of the different job roles involved. Again, this is a really great opportunity for job creation and skilling up. We've got advisors, managers, technical director, architects, engineers, contractors, retrofit coordinators and assessors. The roles to the left-hand side, including the product manager and the training manager, these are our employees. We bring in we have an architect on board, but we bring in architects, engineers and contractors. But there's a hub of kind of expertise there that's required to deliver these kind of things. Again, fantastic opportunity for capacity development. Okay, so it's a whistle-stop tour, I know, but I'm trying to make a lot of time for questions. Some lessons. So we've been active now really since September, so like a year now. Lots of clients, 70 clients, lots of contractors, 350 in all, plus 1,000 trained in different ways, and a good staff team growing as well, and the service is really growing. Advice for replication. So Ashton have asked me to say, if people want to do this elsewhere, what advice can I give? Well, I'd say one size doesn't fit all. Again, we talked about homogeneity, and we want universal services, but especially in this area, it's about what fits and what works. Building trust from the start, working with householders at their level, and remaining very client-focused and understanding their needs rather than your needs. Mapping and research to kind of underpin things, understand where demand is and where supply is. Testing and piloting, starting small but starting. We can sometimes become locked in a cycle of policy documents and planning. Getting out there and testing things at a small scale is super important. Being iterative and flexible, being open to response from clients. Building technical expertise and capacity, a real challenge for local authorities. One criticism for me is that too often it's outsourced. I know there are real constraints on local authorities, but as much as possible, we need to build up that technical expertise, getting trading as soon as possible, being collaborative and open, working with third sector organizations and others that can deliver these kind of services. Securing buy-in, community-based social marketing is a really good way to do that, and local authorities are really well placed to lead on that kind of thing. Funding requirements, there is a startup requirement here, but again, I would emphasize that testing and iterative approach. You don't need to throw hundreds of thousands of pounds at this sort of thing. You can test small scale. Carbon Co, we began our journey with a grant of £1,000, you know. Obviously, we took a while to get here, but the knowledge and expertise is out there now for people to learn from. And yeah, local economic and co-benefits. Again, some people term it community wealth building. There's a fantastic opportunity there to build local economic communities in a neighborhood around retrofit. And that's without talking about all the health benefits that improved housing brings, especially in areas like the north where housing quality is poor, indoor air quality is poor, and it affects residents and it affects their health. Apologies for a cough there. One last plug. So we're boosting the work that we're doing. We're inundated by demand and we can't do enough of it. So we're in the process of raising £500,000 to expand the work that we're doing to a community share issue. This is investment in people-powered retrofit. There's a link here. We very much welcome investment from local authorities or other people, but also please, opportunity to put the word out and tell other people. So that's me. Thank you very much. And yeah, very happy to take questions. There we go.
Excellent. Thanks so much for that, Jonathan. Really, really interesting. And there's absolutely tons of questions in the chat. So I'll put a few of them to you now. Just to say to everybody, you can thumbs up or like a question. So if you want that question to be answered quicker, do give the thumbs up and I'll prioritize those ones. So a first question in from Louise. Which discusses, can you, Jonathan, define the local authority role? So noting that the target audience is not fuel poor. So the local authority role might be around supporting planning, building regulations, supply quality, training, that sort of thing. What are the key things there?
Yeah, it's the local authority role is like many and varied, really. And in people-powered retrofit, we work across Greater Manchester, so we have borough level and also Greater Manchester. Starting with the Greater Manchester level, there's a kind of strategic and a policy-making role there, which kind of opens a lot of doors. And especially in Greater Manchester, Andy Burnham here, he's convened a retrofit task force, bringing together people in the sector. So there's a kind of, almost movement building and kind of awareness raising role there for a start. In terms of like other aspects, well, on that neighborhood basis, we work closely with neighborhood teams, getting the word out in specific areas, opening doors, enabling things, supply chain networks. Local authority has good links there. We're lucky in some areas of Greater Manchester that there are small-scale grants available. I know that that's probably a rare thing these days, but there are grants available. There is local economic development. Again, at a Greater Manchester, we have the Growth Hub, which is like an employment arm of the GMCA. There's also, there's just like planning was mentioned as well. We've done a lot of work with the GM planners, and I really sympathise with the task they have. There's permitted development on external wall insulation, but how that is interpreted varies from every kind of local authority. Part of that is the political aspect. Part of it is just the caseload that the planning department have to work with, the officers there. So where we can, we help them and they help us, and there's a good exchange there. So yeah, and then I guess as well, we do occasionally get grant support from local authorities. I mean, I would be honest and say that that's something that happened more in the past than now. But again, like recognition that this is local economic development and there's a role there for grant giving. So many and varied. Yeah.
That's great. Thanks for that, Jonathan. And I guess a similar related question from David, who asks, how can a local authority best facilitate the formation of this type of service in their area?
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's a bit simplistic to say, you know, give some money, give some grant money. I think, but what I would say, what I really would emphasize is like small amounts of money can go a long way in terms of kickstarting this kind of thing. I think the first step really is to engage in the sector. You know, the retrofit task force is. I mean, and I know there are a number of local authorities are convening these kind of things. That brings together housing associations, third sector organisations, training providers, finance providers, and some kind of larger public sector entities as well. And that's a really great way to kickstart activity in an area. It raises the profile for retrofit. It says, as a local authority, we're committed and we want this to happen. I would also say procurement practices. You know, again, many and varied from local authorities, how they procure, what they procure. I really would give a shout for the community wealth building kind of approach here, to think about how procurement can be more locally orientated. I'm not going to name names, but I've seen procurement done really badly. A kind of assumption that large tier 1 contractors and management entities are the only kind of potential delivery or kind of, you know, winning bids to the tender. That these are the partners we have to work with, and I've seen entities like that come into an area, pay really nail down subcontractors in terms of the prices they pay, make them compromise on quality and on wages and conditions, and then leave an area after a scheme is finished and leave no legacy, because the supply chain that we talk to say, well, we don't want to work on projects like that. We're underpaid, under-resourced, under-trained. Why would we want to do that? So procurement really, in a kind of holistic 360 way, needs to be thought through, because it may seem like a tier 1 provider is the way to go, but what are the outcomes of that procurement exercise in the long term for your local area? Because I've seen them badly. So an enlightened, engaged procurement approach. I know there's constraints on procurement, absolutely, but I think local authorities can think about that, and also there is case studies and best practice out there as well.
Fantastic. Cheers, Jonathan. Very detailed answer.
Sorry, I know I'll throw in more thing. The other thing is to look across local authority departments and not just focus on it as. I mean, again, we could talk about regeneration, training, health, economic development. You know, look at it across the board, not just as like one thing. Yeah.
Great, thanks, Jonathan. A question from Cara from South Somerset District Council. How do you get those who are seen as the able to pay householders to invest in retrofitting their homes? And I'd also like to add to that landlords as well. I know you mentioned them briefly. So those 2 points. How do you get these people to invest in retrofitting their homes, and landlords?
Well, and I know for some this seems counterintuitive. Some people think it's really hard to convince people to invest in their homes for retrofit. All our experience over 15 years is that there is a large body of people that want to do this, and they face barriers to doing so, and that's why they're not able to. And I think it's important to see this process as one of unplugging barriers, taking barriers away, enabling a fantastic economic opportunity to happen. And there are lots of people with money that they want to invest in their home, you know, because other investment opportunities are really limited. You know, in a bank, you will be losing money thanks to the interest rates being so low. You live in your home all the time. You want to invest in it. So part of the thing is to unplug that. The other part is that community-based social marketing, which is engaging with people on their level from a bottom up with trusted partners and talking to them in that kind of way, like building that trust between people. Local authorities have a fantastic track record in this area. Many people in post will remember the 90s, the 2000s, the 90s, where there were direct works organizations, where there were local area-based schemes taking place. local authorities were really trusted. I know it was never that easy. There was always like problems, but local authorities were really trusted. So there is an open door there. So yeah, not wanting to hammer it home, but people do want to invest. Certain number of people do want to invest, a significant number. Landlords, look, that's a really tricky one. For me, we come back to the analogy of sticks and carrots. The MEES legislation is there, and it's there to be used. It needs to be enforced, and enforcement needs to be resourced. And I understand the position local authorities are in. It's tough. But I mean, I've talked to different people, different local authorities, just kind of not naming and shaming to an extent that's possible, to say, or creating databases and say, look, these people are not in compliance for whatever reason. The other one is carrots, and I think there's a limit to what local authorities are able to do in this area, but incentives, borrowing, lending, charges on the house, lending against that. Really, these are the things that are going to, the MEES plus these incentives or enabling that borrowing, that's going to unlock that sector. But I do feel that local authority has a role here, but really it's government that needs to drive it. And they don't show much enthusiasm, but we'll see, because I think generally across the board the retrofit agenda, it's really escalating. So yeah, we'll see.
Yeah. Great for that. Thanks, Jonathan. Two questions in the way from Lucy. So Lucy asked, how important is it to be a co-op? And she's also just added to that that she references that the co-op is 15 years old now, but it's only started in this form about a year ago. So kind of what was the previous 14 years spent doing?
Good question. What have you been doing for 14 years? Okay. Cooperatives are people and organizations coming together for mutual benefit. Yeah. And we actually have both a member benefit and a community requirement to offer community benefit. Our technical term is a community benefit society. Why is that important? One of the key barriers, as identified, is around trust. Who do we trust to offer us independent quality advice and to come into our homes and to offer services and activities? So it's not necessarily a cooperative, but cooperatives do incorporate that trust, that not-for-profit status. People can become members of our organization. They can join the board. They can hold staff members like myself to account. They can dictate strategy. And that, for some, sounds scary, that kind of openness and openness to things being directed. But it is actually, from a service delivery perspective, it's really powerful, because we get to hear from our clients, like direct from the horse's mouth, whether we're doing a good job or not, what's working and what's not working. So it's good. And I think the community benefit aspect balances what some people see as an elite thing of kind of more empowered people, who get involved, the members, plus we have this community benefit requirement. So it's not just that elite that we service the wider community. And indeed, the core object of the organization is climate change mitigation. So, that's our focus. But what I would say is that trust can be engendered by a number of different corporate entities, charities, social enterprises of different kinds, and local authorities. So being cooperative is important in lots of different ways. It's a competitive advantage, I would say, actually, in this sector, but it's not the only way. What have we been doing for 14 years? Well, we voluntary or bits of paid time, testing things out. Our first major project was initiated in 2013, where we did a £500,000 project, retrofit a group of houses in Greater Manchester. Great demonstrator project with grants. Zero interest loans. Fantastic demonstrator what's possible. We've been developing lots of R&D projects. We do a lot of stuff around energy systems and aggregation. A quarter of our team are web developers, software developers, and engineers now. And yeah, I think the story around retrofit, we did that amazing big project and it demonstrated what was possible. We developed an assessment service that we've been running for nearly a decade now, which is incredibly successful and a lot of interest in. We did a lot of training, capacity building, and we came to the realization 3 years ago that that only got people so far, and that was behind the development of people-powered retrofit. And the 3 years of people-powered retrofit, like the last year is the mature service, but we've been testing and piloting stuff over that period of time. So yeah, do check out our website and you can see some of the other stuff we've been doing. But yeah.
That's great. Thanks, Jonathan. We've got about 7 minutes left, so do pop in any more questions you want to be answered. One from Nicola is, how do we engage local contractors in renewable install opportunities? Many are so busy with business as usual and see these opportunities as future, not now. And I guess on top of that, how can a local authority also facilitate this engagement or boost this engagement?
It is a real challenge. And what I would say is, it's interesting because we sort of perceive that you need to persuade householders to commission work, but contractors will just flock to work when it's there. It's money. They'll just focus on the money. It's actually in many ways the reverse. Householders really want to do the work. Contractors, as I kind of alluded to about some of these eco schemes, are really wary of these schemes. And there's a job of persuasion that's required because they feel they're complex, that they need specialist knowledge that they don't necessarily have, that they're more hassle than they're worth. And let's be clear, let's be honest about the early adopters. They can be quite awkward people to work for. They can be quite opinionated, and sometimes they might not have their best interest at heart because they've got a certain mindset. With the contractors, part of our thing is that we're an intermediary. We bring technical expertise and knowledge that we can advise them on and train them up in. We also filter clients, so we bring them good clients that we do a job of work in bringing, and we sit as an intermediary there between the contractors and the clients. What can local authorities do? One thing is around best practice and focusing on that and working with local people. One thing is around procurement. Again, let's not, you might think we procured this big tier one and, wow, the local contractors haven't got involved. There's a reason for that, so we need to rethink procurement practices. And there is increasing amounts of money coming from central government for training. Again, focus training on the ground training, not necessarily in classrooms, not necessarily only accreditation. Again, I know there's complexities here. It feels like a risk, but the funding opportunities we've seen at local level do allow for non-accredited training and also facilitate peer knowledge and sharing. The other thing I would quickly say is if they're busy, and they are often busy, and there's work, they face problems about growing. Yeah. So often we work with sole traders that say, I don't want to get involved in PAYE. I don't want to get involved in bookkeeping. I don't want to do all that stuff. Or I have to do it in the evenings. There are ways for local authorities to offer traditional business support to help them grow, and get their heads around PAYE and all this sort of thing. There are potential ways to help them create cooperatives to help them manage those kind of admin tasks to help them grow. It's the sort of stuff we're doing de facto, but local authorities have a role in that as well.
That's great. Cheers, Jonathan. We've got time for about 2 more questions. So one from Marie, which is a more broader question on regulation. She asks, are there regulators in retrofitting, things such as quality assurance? And I know you mentioned PAS 2035.
Yeah. PAS 2035 is a government process standard around how retrofit should be tackled, the stages, the job roles, an outline of quality assurance. There is PAS 2030, which is around some of the specifics around how work is delivered. So PAS 2035 isn't a quality standard in and of itself. It's a process standard, the process that should be gone through, and how quality should be ensured. I would say it's a developing standard. It's an immensely positive move, but it's also at a very limited stage. And I know a lot of the Green Homes Grant LAD schemes and the Social Housing Decarbonisation Fund schemes require past 2035. And I know from my colleagues who are working on that, they find it clunky and difficult to work with. And I totally understand that. But what I would say is, like, it's a great standard that the technical authors and BAEs are willing to improve and adapt, and I think we should invest in it as a standard. But yeah, that's a place to go to, and there is training around the roles within that standard if you're interested in delivering it in your area.
Cheers, Jonathan. And then just on training, finally, obviously there is a huge skills gap, a green skills gap that's kind of opened up, what's been around for a while now. What can we do, co-ops or local authorities do to boost skills training, particularly from, groups that are underrepresented, think of females or people from more diverse backgrounds. How can we boost this as we build a workforce that's greener? The
construction industry is still too male, definitely. It's not always too ethnically undiverse, but it can be quite segmented in terms of how it looks. I think there are a number of things there. One, as local authorities, at every level of policymaking in this agenda, we can make clear that we require involvement of people from all these different diverse communities. Too often, panels are convened where there are too male and too white and too middle-aged, and a hand up, I'm one of those. But we need to clearly say, this is not our ambition. We want to be more diverse. Some local authorities even, say we've got a quota for this engagement panel. We want so many people, women, so many people from ethnic backgrounds. Secondly, in terms of that recruitment into these sectors, and it's not just builders on job, it's technical, the software developers are too male as well, and architects, So it's a job that requires active engagement in those communities to go out, and it's going into schools, it's going into colleges, and showing and demonstrating and working with mentors and advocating, that sort of thing. So a little bit of a quick answer at the end there, but there are lots of things we can do. We can be very vocal about it, but we can be very active about it as well.
No problem. Thanks a lot, Jonathan. Just to say, well, we're out of time, unfortunately, on this workshop. There were a few more questions in the chat, but I'm sure you're happy for anyone to contact you with any.
I've got a booth at the expo, so please do come and find me.
Yeah, no problem. Well, that moves me on to the next bit. Thank you very much, Jonathan, for that. Really great presentation, really well thought out answers. Really appreciate it. We've got about a 15-minute break now until the third workshop, so do pop into one of the expo booths to do a bit of networking or speak to Jonathan, on a more formal level. This workshop was recorded, and it's still being recorded, and will be available on the Net Zero local page in a few days' time. So yeah, it's a short break now. Thanks for joining us, and enjoy the rest of the conference. Bye.